nobody can see Larissa. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and start. I have actually a full presentation that I will send to Oрлеу. I'll send it to Larissa, and they can do with it whatever they want. I presume they'll make it available to you.
Жауабын жаз дедім ғой мен, Аруна. Әкел кітабыңды.
And if you're not needing to talk, maybe you could mute for now. And that would be great. I'm going to go ahead and start. I'll go ahead and start, and we'll just see how we do. Congratulations to everyone. If you don't need to be on, you might want to mute your microphone. If you can mute if you don't need it.
Микрофон.
Okay. All right. So anyway, congratulations. We're going to be talking about class management, something you've probably already been doing. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. What is class management? In the old days, or the old days when I was younger, we used to think of class management as simply making your plans and keeping the students quiet and having them do their work. And if they didn't do something correctly, then they were punished. Now, we found that there are much more useful ways of having classroom management. And that's what we'll talk about. In the newer ways, there are many different new ideas about classroom management, but I've put them together in a way that I think works for me. And this is actually an entire course. This is much more than you could get in an hour. So this is a good place to start. And if you want to have some other ideas, then you might want to search in other places. You're going to hear me talking a lot about proactive and proactivity. When I talk about that, it has to do with being able to think ahead and do things before something happens, rather than waiting. In the old way of doing things, very often we were reactive. We waited until there was a problem, and then we disciplined someone, or we waited until there was a problem with learning, and then we tried to fix it. Now, we're trying to think of ways to avoid that. I like that because it's much less work as a teacher. If you think ahead and you spend a little time at the beginning, it takes much less time than trying to fix something later. In English, if you're familiar with the expression, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's always easier to do something ahead of time. Think of it like, for example, like a store manager. If a store manager sees that an aisle is too small and the people will get all bunched up and get upset, if that manager is proactive, he or she will make the aisle bigger. So there's just not a problem with it. If they're reactive, they just leave the aisle and everybody gets upset and they have to fight about it. That's the difference between older and newer styles, if that makes any sense. I hope so. The things we're talking about will work on any level and with any age. And I'm going to give you quite a lot of information, but again, I will send as much information as I can, including any kind of diagrams or whatever, to Oрлеу. So hopefully you will have it available. Also, you can find me on Mark Dorr Education in Facebook, if that's another way to find things. So let's see. Anyhow, Rahmet, spasiba for having me here. And let's kind of get into things, get going on this. I'm going to have to cut out a few things because we have a little less time. You could say, if I had to say, in a way, I wrote down some notes here, that effective class management is more than just keeping them quiet. It's in a learning environment that encourages students to be active in learning and to have positive social interactions. So where do we begin? If we're going to start coming up with new
Қалай сен
management,
қай размергесің?
where do we begin? We begin with you.
Жоқ, мынандай үстінде кейін.
We begin
Larissa,
with
could
you.
you switch off your microphone, please?
Күшті, юбкасын болып не қазин деріп алсың.
Larissa, switch off your microphone.
And we begin with you. That's the place to start. I know we're thinking about the students, but the best place to begin is with you. We want you to be happy. We want you to have an enjoyable experience, and then the students will as well. So we need to begin with where you're at. So something you might think about is, before you begin your class or before you begin your year, start with the person who's going to make this all happen, and that's you. And this will take just a little of your time, but it will save you much time. If you take a moment and think, what am I very good at? And what am I not so good at right now? Maybe I will be later, but right now there are some things I'm not so good at. Right now I can do A, B, and C very well, but D, E, and F, I'm not as good at. Okay, so you think about that and you think ahead, like the manager with the aisle that I talked about. And you think, okay, I know I'm not so good at some things. Maybe I'm really good at grammar, and maybe I'm really good at organizing, and maybe I'm really good at being nice to the students. But maybe I'm not so good when there's a problem and I have to talk about a problem. And maybe I'm not so good at writing, and maybe I'm not so good at some other things. Well, you know, those other things like writing and a problem are going to happen. So you think ahead. You think, how will I handle that? It's called psychological inoculation. It's a fancy term. It's like a vaccine for your mind. And all you're doing is you're thinking, there is going to be a time when I will have a problem that I will have difficulty solving. What will I do? What are my options? And even spending 1 minute on that, let alone a few minutes, is enough to help you when those times come to make it easier for yourself. Because you have already thought about it. It's not something completely new. So I strongly suggest that sometime, not now, but sometime, you spend even a few minutes of self-assessment. As a teacher, I'm very good at this. I'm not quite as good at this. We all have things we are good and not so good. What am I going to do when those not so good things happen? And then how will I model for the students? You can't just talk about things, you need to model. How will I model being a good citizen? How will I model not being upset? How will I model good behavior? Because do as I do is very strong. What do you call him? Is it Nasruddin? How do you say that word? The man's name. You know who I'm talking about, though, yeah? You know those stories. Do you know the stories about Nasruddin when a woman brought her son who had the addiction to sugar? And she said, Mullah, please tell him, stop eating so much sugar. And the son is just eating while they're standing there. And she says, please tell him to stop. I don't have a lot of money and we spend it all on sugar. And the mullah looks and he goes, come back to me in a week. And so the woman and the son leave and they come back. And the son is eating away all the sugar, 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 sugar. And Mullah looks, goes, come back another week. And they leave. And then the mother and the son come back. And Nasruddin says, boy, eat only 1 spoon of sugar a day. And the mother says, well, thank you, Mullah, but why did it take you 2 weeks to do this? Why couldn't you have just told him that a long time ago? And he says, because I myself eat sugar, and I had to see if I could do it myself before I could tell him. So it's sort of the same with teachers. We are models. You can't say things. Modeling for this is thing you have to consider how I'm doing it. Very often, I'm a teacher and I knowing you will have times when you will feel angry. Think ahead and give yourself a mental vaccine for that. You think, okay, what will make me angry? I know I am angry when a student shouts. Okay, I'm going to picture students shouting. What will I do? Maybe the tricks is count to 5 in your head. 1, 2, 3, something to that effect. Other trick is you imagine yourself co-op with the student. Something will stop it. Even a simple one is just tell yourself, wait. And even just doing that can sometimes stop that anger enough that you don't yell, that you don't get upset. And then that causes trouble because we are the role models, okay? So once we've done that, now we're starting to design our class. And remember, as a manager, we are managing everything, just like the manager of a store manages everything. So I hope I'm not talking too fast. Maybe someone will tell me if I am. One of the very most important things for managing a class is selecting the class rules. And one of the most important points about class rules is to keep them very few and very simple. I used to live in a place where we had a community swimming pool, and it had many rules, and nobody followed them. And the reason was they had an entire wall filled with rules. There was too many rules. Nobody followed them because nobody even read them. It's the same in your class. If you can keep rules, a few rules, and simple, that's going to make a big difference in how effective they are. You also want to make sure that if you're talking about behavior problems, that you address that they are observable and relevant. What does that mean? So if you were talking about a student's behavior, if it's observable, you can see it, hear it, something like this. It's not something you're just guessing. I think that student is, no, it's something you can see or hear or whatever. And it's relevant. So for example, something that is observable, a behavior that's a problem, that's observable and relevant is if one student punches the other. You can see it and it is relevant. It's important to this class. It hurts the learning, it hurts a student, so it's relevant. But now maybe if you have somebody who, well, maybe somebody scratches their head every once in a while. It is observable, you can see it, but is it relevant? Is that a problem in class? Not really. And there are things that are not observable and not relevant. You might not see the student or hear the student do anything. And yet you could have a teacher who says, yeah, but I think they're thinking bad thoughts. Well, it's not observable or relevant. So you have to keep it that way. During class, once you have set up your rules, at the beginning of your start of your class or your lesson or whatever, have those rules available. Put them on your computer screen or put them on the wall behind you. Or if you're in a class, put them up on a board. And then review them every once in a while. And then verify understanding. That is very important. Don't just give them the rules. Say, okay, now, Ali B, can you say the number one, but say it in a different way? Okay, yeah. And Gulnara, can you tell me why number 3 is important? That sort of a thing. Verify that they understand what's going on with that. Yeah. So getting rules set is very much important. Preparing for your class to start, the more things you can get ready ahead, the better. Probably most of you know that. And by now, many of you probably know that getting together with your technical person for your school or for your district before school starts is a good idea. Before your class starts or before your school starts, talk to your technical person, your IT, and say, what are the two or three most important things, the things that happen all the time? And they will know immediately. They will say, oh, every year there's this or this or this. Great. So tell me, how can I fix that? What should I do? Well, for this one, you should call me. For this one, you should push this button. If you do that before school starts, proactively, you're going to save a lot of time rather than waiting until a student has a problem and trying to figure it out. So again, being proactive rather than reactive. When you have those first days happening, I know I'm giving you a lot of information. I'm trying to catch up because we started a little late. I'm sorry about that. And I just have a lot of good information. If you are having trouble understanding it all, I will send more information so you can read it or see it and you can have a better understanding. Try to learn the students' names as soon as possible and try to get the students to. Because in the first week, the best idea is getting the students working together as much as possible in the first week, using whole class activities, not individual activities if you can, or not pairs, but an entire class. It helps to create that group and helps them to understand things. Make sure to get those rules very clear. And also in that first week, the first week of classes, usually it's easier for you and for the students if you try to have less complicated lessons. Save that for week 2 or week 3 if you can. Give us the students a clear idea of what you're doing and why you're doing it. We call that demystifying teaching. Something that's very scary for everybody is unknown. You don't know what's in the next room. You don't know what's going to happen. Well, very often in a class, it's a lot of unknowns. Very often students arrive and they don't know why they're doing an activity and they don't know how long they have. and they don't know if this is a very important thing. All of that can make people feel anxious and nervous. We know from studies when students are nervous, they do not perform well. And we know from our own experience, we're all language teachers. We know if a language student does not feel comfortable, the language student gets quiet, doesn't speak, feels like they don't know anything. So we don't want to have that going on. We want to have them feel good. And if you have parents involved, you want them to feel good as well, because dealing with the parents can be a whole different thing. Reacting firmly, but fairly. Sometimes when I teach people, when I teach teachers about these newer management methods, then they think that they can only be nice. Well, yes, of course, we are trying to be nice, but you must kind of stick with the rules. They have to follow those things. So you have to be firm, but fair. And of course, seating makes a difference. If you have a live class, if you are not in a video class, but if you're back to live classes, you know, you can start to see that student there is starting to be a little bit of a problem. It's much better to what we call nip it in the bud, or just move that student before things become a problem, because you're being proactive rather than waiting for things to build up bigger. You don't have to say, oh, I think you're being a bad person, I'm going to move you. You can simply say, okay, as the teacher, I'm saying, hey, let's mix up the class. I'm going to move you around a different place. That's all you need to do. So seating options can make a big, big difference. Getting students' attention. Most of you know about something like flicking the lights or having a word, training students. So if you say a certain word, they're quiet and they watch you. I think that's a pretty standard thing. But there's some others people might not know, like talking more quietly or other things. And so in terms of working with students' attention, I don't know if you know the expression live wire, but that means someone who's very energetic, sometimes too energetic. And if you have one or several of those in your class, be proactive. Don't wait for them to, you know, they're going to need to use their energy. So give them some way to use their energy, or they will find another way, and that way might not be appropriate. So for example, maybe you're doing large group work and you know that they're going to have trouble sitting still. So you give them a task of keeping track of things people are doing by going around to the different groups. That is a positive thing, and it's a proactive thing. So that way they use their energy, but it's for good. See, that's how that proactive work has gone. So let's just check here, see what we're doing. Trying to move along. Maintaining attention and involvement is so important. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have seen me when I've been in Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan at the conference presentations, but very often I have more than 100 people in the room. And people are surprised that I am able to keep their attention. I'll tell you right now how to do it. It's no magic. It's no secret. It's just knowing a few things about keeping people's attention. One of the most important ones has to do with physical. If you watch me when I'm at a conference, I don't just stand at the front of the room and lecture, kind of like I'm doing here, but I have no choice. I can't move around. No, usually at a conference, I move back and forth. People are never sure if I'm going left or right as I talk. That helps to keep attention. Also physical movement, not just standing still, doing something provocative. Now, provocative not meaning something you shouldn't, that's inappropriate, but something that just provokes their thought. So if you want to keep their attention, for example, if I told you at the beginning of this, I might have told you, in fact, I like to be proactive because I'm lazy. Well, that would probably catch your attention. Then I would say, because I don't like to have all these problems to deal with, I like to have an effective class, and I go on from there. That's using provocative language to keep attention. By doing that, keeping attention and keeping interest is one of the most important things in reducing behavior problems. Students get bored, children get bored, adults get bored. But having things that they can get into makes a difference. Seating can do it, pace can do it, instructional method. If you're back in a live classroom, like many schools here actually are going back to live classes this week. I don't know in Kazakhstan or so, but here many are going back to live classes. If you have a board, a whiteboard or a blackboard or a smart board, please remember to write in large enough letters, and remember to write the top half, because any students in the back can't see it if it's in the bottom half usually. If they can't see it, they're frustrated, they get bored, they create behavior problems. So simply writing in the top half of the board is a proactive way of keeping the behavior good. I'm going to wait for any questions. I'm going to wait for any questions until the end. And then we'll deal with that. Now, management is, like I said, it's not just about discipline. It's not just about behavior. It's also about making better achievement, have them learn better. If we manage better, we learn better. So we learn that if we keep their behaviors well, we have more time to learn, and it's a better atmosphere. Other ways we can raise achievement. Plan our lessons. Some teachers still go into their lesson with no plan or very little plan. A well-planned lesson is going to go better. Clarify your expectations. Again, take away the mystery, take away the fear. This is what we're doing today, and this is why we're doing it, because next week we're going to need this or whatever. Just let them know what's going on. Involve them in their own learning. Perhaps another one of the most important things. You can use the same tests, the same or similar tests, similar activities, similar examples every year, but make it geared toward that class very easily by doing things like including these students' names, or make the topic of the sentence something that students in that class like: fish, telephones, clouds, whatever it is. It's very, very simple to personalize everything. Personalize your examples, personalize your tests, personalize everything you can in the class. And that makes the students feel like they own it. That will improve behavior, and it will improve their learning, and it will improve their test scores. A very simple way to do all those things. Again, you don't have to work so hard if you just are proactive and do things like that. If you wait and just use the same old questions for this class like you did for this class and all, sure, it saved you a little bit of time in making the activity, but it's going to be a lot more time in trying to catch up on the language. Maintain student accountability and make sure that students have a way to demonstrate that they understand it. Reward things as well as punish. And we'll get into that. I'll probably tell you ahead now, but you can reward students for behavior. You can reward students. One simple way for behavior is a raffle jar. A raffle is when you pick a name out of a hat and somebody wins. Well, every time somebody does something good in class, maybe you write their name on a little piece of paper and put it in a jar. And maybe every week on Friday, you move that jar around and somebody reaches in and picks a name, and maybe that person gets something nice, a small thing, like a piece of candy or whatever you would give a student. Making sure to reward good behavior, reward good academics, as well as stopping the bad things is good. Another very easy way to make your classes more effective and to help with behavior in classes is to use questions. If you learn to use questions well, then you will easily be raising your students' scores and behavior. If you do not use it, you're missing a very good tool. Many teachers, when they're asking questions, will simply start at the front of the class and work to the back, or start on the right and work to the left, or start with the A, go to B, go to C, go to D. So the problem there is everybody knows where they are. Oh, it's 20 people before I have to answer. I'm not even going to listen. So they're not paying attention, they're having behavior problems, or they're just not learning as well. So one of the simple things you can do with questioning is randomize. First question goes to this student, next question goes to this student, next question to this student, next question to this student, like that. You don't want to scare them, but they just never know who's going to be asked, so they pay attention a little bit more. You ask a variety of questions, not the same question. There are different ways to ask a question. Ask the question before naming the student is a good one. And also, if you wait, if you pause just a few seconds, it's very powerful. So listen to the difference here. Here's the usual way teachers will ask a question. What's the answer to question 3, Tony? Better way. What's the answer to question 3, Tony? Everybody is listening because they don't know who's going to get that in that short little space there. It's a very good way to do it. Have students respond to student answers. Whether a student answers correctly or incorrectly, you could maybe not say. So let's say I say, okay, Anna, what's the answer to question 10? And Anna answers it. And I turn to, oh, I don't know, Boris. And I say, Boris, what do you think about that? Do you agree or not? Before I even give an answer. Keeps them listening, keeps them on their toes. And again, any questions related to students' life is going to be better. How can you make them do better on tests? You can. Surprisingly, very often I have teachers who, on the one hand, they say, well, I want my students to do well on these tests because, you know, those scores will look better. And on the other hand, they'll say, oh, I made that test very difficult. They hadn't figured it out. They couldn't get it. Of course, you can have difficult tests, but you can teach them how to take tests. Give them the skills for it. Familiarize them with the layout. Maybe they've never done a multiple choice test. Show them how that works before they have to, that kind of a thing. Explain good time management. You have to keep an eye on the clock. Part of good time management is if you don't know the answer to one question, skip it and come back. That's another good trick for tests. Save time at the end to check your answers. These are all good skills that they will be able to use from first grade to the university. And you could make a difference in how they're taking those tests. Test anxiety is one of the biggest anxieties students have. So if you can find ways for them not to feel anxious, but still be challenged, then you're really doing good work as a teacher. The idea of off-task versus misbehavior is important to understand. When a child is misbehaving, they are purposefully causing a problem. For whatever reason, they're standing up, they're yelling, they're not doing their things, that kind of thing. Being off task is different, and sometimes teachers will punish students for that, but it really doesn't need a punishment, it just needs some help. When you're off task, it just means your mind wandered a little bit and you weren't doing the work. Or maybe you didn't eat breakfast this morning and you're not thinking very well and you did the wrong thing. Being able to notice the difference between misbehavior and off task can solve a lot of problems. Because often teachers will punish and yell and all these things at a student for just being off task. And it could be the student is off task because of many different reasons, including maybe things at home are not easy or who knows what. But just remembering there is that difference between off task and misbehavior. Some discipline do's, I like to call them, things to help you do things. Well, one, a very interesting one, is use positive words, not just to make students feel good, but because the brain processes positives easier than negatives. It actually takes longer in the neurons to process a negative than a positive. So as a teacher, you can use that. And the more direct, the better. So instead of saying, don't do this, say, do this. It processes faster and has a better chance of working. Instead of saying, can't, won't, will not, am not, any of those, make them will, or have, or am. All of those words actually literally process better in the limbic system of your brain, and your students will actually physically react better to that. So remember that. Being friendly to the student is good, but not the buddy, not the friend. You can be friendly, but not their friend. The friend, your friend will do practically anything for you. If you're a good teacher, you won't do that. You will make sure that they are learning what they need to learn and not change things. So that's a difficult line to walk sometimes. Be willing to laugh with your students sometimes. Sometimes students can be hilarious and funny. And when they see that you can laugh with them, there's that wall that's between the students and the teachers just break because you can have a good time with them. Make sure your explanations are clear and simple. They're very long, very hard to understand. It's tough. Be consistent. If you are a teacher who one day follows the rules and next day doesn't, or follows the rules for this person but not for that person, the rules go out the window. People don't even pay attention after that. We won't talk about the 90-10. I'm trying to get through quickly for you. I'm going to keep talking, but if you need to go, I understand that we're probably going over your time. So unless Larissa tells me to go, I'm going to talk a little bit more. There's a well-known language person in the note who did the principle of least intervention. It's actually a psychology thing, named Staven, last name Staven. And the basic idea is you do the least intervention you can if there's a problem. So the simple answer is, if a student is causing a problem, don't be very strict right away. Begin with the easiest, gentlest way. Something like I messages, not about them. I hear a lot of noise back here and I need to have that go away. That sort of thing, rather than putting it on that person. Appropriate positive humor. Another way to do it gently is to say, what should you be doing right now? Okay, the student gets back. Very often, something like that solves many, many issues. But if not, then you move to moderate responses. Things like, you withdraw privileges, you change the seating, time out. And then if it's much more serious than that, you need to involve some sort of administrator. But the whole idea behind that is, if you are very hard on somebody for just small things, if you don't give them a chance to get out of that, it just is very oppressive. And again, they feel restricted in a class, and their performance will go down. Maybe their behavior will be better, but you will not get nearly the learning out of it. Preventing some behavior problems, like I said, reducing punitive control will help. The clear rules, if you just make them clear, have them right there so you don't even have to say anything. You just point at it. So remember that. Appropriate procedures, student involvement, teaching the students social skills, everything from modeling yourself to actually have them walk through it. Okay, you're going to be someone who's angry and you're going to be the friend. What do you say? Things like that. And just beginning with mild responses. I have an example from when I was training teachers in Latin America. And one man was in charge of a school. He was the director of a school. And every year, at the same week every year, the students would tease him. They would go over here and do something bad. And so he would go running off this way. And then they'd come over here and do something bad. And they had him running all over the school. Well, that's because he did very, very serious responses for very small things. And so pretty soon the students were running the director because they were running him all over the playground. He should have, and he did learn to, begin with mild responses and then go to something, more serious if needed. Some causes of misbehavior. Of course, there can be some bad issues. There could be health factors. Maybe the child is sick. Maybe the child hasn't eaten. Maybe there's a problem at home. Could be physical impairments. When I was in junior high school, I was not doing well until they finally figured out that I needed glasses. So it could be something like that, or hearing, anything. Neurological conditions, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. A student like that who needs to have medication or treatment will very often be distracted easily and misplace assignments and not do things and forget things and do this over and over and be very frustrating. But it's not that student trying to be a problem for you. So you might need to contact a professional or talk to the parents, something like this. It might be medication, and it might be classroom factors. Maybe it's noisy there. Maybe there are bullies at school. It could be a lot of things. So to avoid any kind of disruptions, again, the raffle jar, clear rules, deal privately with things if you can, instead of in the middle of class telling a student doing this. That's less embarrassing. and on from there. I kind of skipped through some of that, but I believe I got the basis for what we were going to talk about for this session. It's a huge topic, discussion on these things. But I don't know if Larissa would like to take questions or have people write those in, if that's a time for that now.
Sorry, can I ask you? Earlier you said
Yes.
about behavior, and in your opinion, how can we collaborate with our students more productive? So modern teens prefer to spend all free time only in social nets, and how can we collaborate with them?
It's a great question. You're talking about the phones, right? Yeah. That is a big challenge for everyone right now. And I think everyone is trying to figure out the best answer. One of the answers, I can't tell you that I've found the best answers for everything, but one of the answers that I came up with was, in English, we have an expression, if you can't beat them, join them. And so I started having more assignments that they would do using their phones, like to look up things and all that. And it actually started helping somewhat because they could still use their phone and they liked that, but they were getting their schoolwork done at the same time. I know other people have done things like restrictions. You can't have your phone in the classroom and things like that. But maybe if you find a very good answer, you could tell us all that. Thank you. Do we have any others?
And also, can I ask you again?
Please.
Earlier said about some rules. In your opinion, how do you think, what are the most important rules for us as a teachers? Not only for students.
Yes, of course. Well, actually, give me just a moment. I will look up, I have my important rules. I'll tell you mine. Just a moment. I keep them the same as I tell you to do with the students. I keep them simple so I can remember them. But now, of course, I'm talking to you and I can't remember them. Here we go. So my 3, everyone has to make their own choices. To me, I feel this is very important for teachers, though. To respect the humanity of every student. So that means, that doesn't mean I say, oh, it's okay to do something bad. It doesn't mean they shouldn't. No, of course they should do the right thing. But I need to talk to them in the most respectful way I can, whether that student is an adult or a child. To create as many opportunities to learn as possible. And to adjust classes to meet the students' needs. So that's an excellent question, because that's another great way to manage your class. Good thinking. If you boil it down like I did there to the 3 most important things, where if I remember respect, create, adjust. There are so many times in a day, a week, a month, we all have them as teachers. There's so many times when so much is going on and it's all on you and you're just like, oh, how can I do this? And that's the time when the copier won't work and everything, that's when you go, okay, what's the most important thing to me? I've got to respect the student, create the most learning, and create many opportunities and adjust. All right. Well, in this case, that means I can either spend half an hour fighting with the copier, or I can change my plan. Looks like I'm changing my plan. And so you really make a very good point when you ask about that, because by having those, you reduce a lot of your own stress, because you can just go, it's not my priority. I'm going to do something else, or I'm going to do this. Can I ask if you have any?
So, could I speak? Could I ask a question?
Please.
Thank you very much. So, hello, Professor. Thanks a lot for your
Hello.
informative presentation and sharing your experiences. So my question is related to the creating a positive relationship with the students before we even proceed to the class. So I might be missing the first part of your presentation because I couldn't join the Facebook link. Yeah, so could you please give us some of your suggestions, right? So from your work experience, what would we do as a teachers to create a positive relationship before we even proceed to the class, like before we even get to know them?
Another excellent question. I love working with all of you teachers there because you have these great questions. First, I will say, if you missed it, I did promise that I will send more information to Oрлеу, so you will be able to review this later in case there's something you missed. But I will encapsulate a few things. I didn't talk about the parents in this, and I want to make sure to mention that first before I go any further. I don't know how many people out there are public school teachers, like primary or secondary teachers. If you are, you're working with parents also. And parents need to know their child is valued and that the child's education is valued. If you can get the parent as an ally, then the next time there's a problem, it's a lot easier. And if the parent is working with you, that's going to help make you closer to the student. But other things you can do beforehand. I'm just going to skim over a few others, but please check Oрлеу or go to Mark Dorr Facebook. On Facebook, you'll find Mark Dorr Education. A few ideas that we can review again have to do with take away the mystery of classes, say why you're doing something so the student isn't scared. What's going on? I don't understand. Anything that's unknown is scary. And there are so many things that the students don't know. Walking into a classroom is like walking into a foreign country sometimes. They don't know what's going on and they don't know why they're doing it. So making it clear what's going on, showing them that you are there as a guide, not as a guard. You are there to help them move forward, not to keep them back. Does that mean you don't challenge them? No. Does that mean they might not have to work hard? No. But still, when they get there, they're going to feel proud and they're going to be glad because you were there and you showed them that. Sometimes teachers are reticent. They don't want to show that they're helpful for a student because they think the student will see them as weak. But I have found that to be quite the opposite. And I've trained quite a few teachers. When you show students that you are on their side, but you're not going to be their friend, but you're going to help them learn, they can improve in leaps and bounds. I think those are several very important things. Excellent question. I hope I answered it correctly.
Yeah, you did actually.
Thank
you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm here for anybody else.
So basically sharing my opinion regarding your answer to my question. So I think it's some of the strategies of our inclusive classroom, right? So you meant, giving the help not only to those students that we think of inclusive, right? Like with problems, but all students regarding their achievement level. I mean, maybe overperforming students too, right? Because they should be noted in that group too. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
No, and that also talks about the very difficult thing, if I imagine many of us have had, where you've got a mixed level classroom. And that's very challenging.
Yes. In the Kazakhstani context, we have maybe 30 students with different levels, and they cannot be actually differentiated because of the time limit. So I think this is a huge problem for us to face as teachers, but still, we're trying our best.
Oh, of course. And I every time I've gone to Kazakhstan, I have been amazed at how you've had to take on the trilingual system by yourselves, basically. I'm not sure how you do it, but let me just ask very quickly, how do you handle a multi-level classroom? Do you do anything in particular?
So in the previous, I think somebody else would answer, or can I answer? Like belonging to my personal.
Yes,
Oh,
you
go
can
ahead.
answer.
Okay, so I think there were some practices of trilingual education, but for now, it's a bit confusing for the students and for the teachers too, because despite the fact that there was rules, right? There was some papers regarding that rule. It haven't been able to be achievable at that time because it's impractical in the classroom. Because like starting from the first grade to start to teach English language when the little child cannot speak in his mother tongue like properly, I think it was a huge problem, right? So yeah, so I think we didn't achieve it yet. We are still on the way to go. We have some problems.
Well, I really like listening to your opinion, and I value that. Thank you very much. I do wonder, teachers around the world, teachers here, teachers there, teachers anywhere I've been, have a very similar problem. Somebody higher up makes a decision, but provides no support. And that's very difficult on a teacher in any situation. I don't know that it's impossible to have trilingual education, but you need to have support. You can't just be figuring this out in your own classroom. This needs to be worked out together. But yeah, I mean, like definitely in your situation, I'm not sure how that's going to run. I hope it does, but I think it's going to take a concerted effort, and it's going to need support. People can't just make a decision and then suddenly it magically happens. In the United States, we're lucky if we speak one language.
Yes.
Luckily for me, I grew up in a household that several languages were spoken. So I was fortunate. Many Americans, they speak English.
Okay, Mark Dorr, I have
Yes.
one question for you. I'm glad to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You give us a lot of your experience. Thanks. And in each class, we have weaker students and active students. It's difficult to work with such kind of students. Can you say, or can you tell me something activities?
Excellent question. I certainly have had to deal with that many times, probably like you. And it is difficult, but it is not something we can't handle. Probably things I'm going to tell you are things you already do. I don't know. But of course, one of the standard things to do is to pair a strong student with a weak student. Are you doing that? So one of the usual things to do in that situation is to put students who are doing very well with students who are not doing very well. So for example, you might have them do pair work together. And the idea is that the strong student will help the weak student. That works sometimes, but it also can make the strong student feel unhappy also, because sometimes the strong student wants to talk and do things like a strong student with other strong students. So another thing to do, including pairing, there's many things. First of all, there's pairing. Second is mixing. So you mix students, and sometimes you even make sure to have the weak students working together so that they can come up with things. So you pair, you mix, and surprisingly, again, that point that I made earlier about how anything you can make more personal for students raises their level. Surprisingly, just from my own experience, when I make sure to include topics that I know those students in that class like, and if I include their names, or if I just make a little quip, or if I even say something like, hey, how's your grandpa today? I know he wasn't doing well, things like that. I have actually seen multi-level classes start to get closer because there is that ownership of the language. Multi-level classes will always be a challenge for us, I think, but such techniques as that can at least help us out. Do you have any other ideas that I didn't mention? Well, thank you for asking that anyway. Such wonderful questions. Can I do anything else for anybody here? Oh, before I go, I want to remember to tell you, you might want to make sure to go to Mark Dorr Education on Facebook and like and follow it, because soon I'm going to be giving a free teacher education book on it. It's a very simple book. It's a booklet, and I'm making it very simple so people can print it on a copier if they want. I'm also not keeping the copyright, so you can get it to other people. But anyhow, if you want to, make sure to go to Mark Dorr Education on Facebook and like and follow, and then there'll be an announcement coming up soon about that booklet in case you're interested in that. I really appreciate all that Oрлеу has done, all that the director and Larissa has done, what I've seen of the teachers in your country and in your area doing. Fantastic. I wish I could be there right now. I wish we could all travel right now. I have done the best I could with online, but probably like many of you, I just really miss the ability to see teachers, see students, hear things, see what's going on rather than these little calls. But it's what we've had to do, right? And you know, it's been challenging like that. And it's been challenging as a parent. I have kids and I'm an educator, and still with virtual schooling, I had difficulty getting them to do the work sometimes. And you know, we've all had to go through a lot. Thank you everybody for coming and listening to this. And I'm glad that you find it easy to follow. Please let me know if I can help. By the way, when we did this, Oрлеу was nice and did a little survey for me. And that's why I chose this, because there were a lot of people interested in motivation and classroom management. But on Mark Dorr Education, I'm going to try to get these other things like distance gap and case studies and other things that people have asked for. Hopefully in the future, they'll come out. So thank you again, Oрлеу. Yeah, can I answer any other questions for anybody? Are you starting back to in class? Are you starting back to
again, please?
Yes.
Thank you for your instructions. Thank you for your session. And also, what do you think about scaffolding? What scaffolding and more prefer for using in class?
Well, let me start your question with a question. What do you think of scaffolding?
I think about maybe relationship between teacher and student, and also about relationship between leader and simple students.
Yes. Yes.
I agree or not?
I know, I do, actually. I do. And I think it's important, as we remember scaffolding, to remember spiraling as well. Are you familiar with the term spiraling? That's okay. It's not the same. It's not the same as scaffolding, but it's a companion to it. The idea that you introduce something, you introduce an idea here, and then your lessons progress, and then they find it here too, and then it progresses and they find it here too. So they keep encountering it as they go further and further up.
Okay. Thank you for your answer.
Fantastic. I'm happy to, that's why I'm here. Well, I see Larissa said that she's sending out the questions for you, I think, for your certificates. And feel free to stay in touch. And I'm very honored to be asked there again. I'm so sorry that I had trouble getting in, and I'm sorry I made people wait, and did the best I could. And Larissa and everybody there were wonderful to find a way to make this work. Technology is our friend and our foe sometimes. Anyhow, I'm so glad to have so many friends over there, and I wish you well. Please stay well and enjoy your teaching. Bye.